Okay, amazing. So, welcome everybody. We're going to get started. Thank you for joining myself and Layla. We're going to do intros so that you guys know a little bit about us, and then we'll talk all about egg freezing, medications, and how to afford the process. So, a couple of notes really quickly. Stay on mute. I think you all are muted already, so that's easy. And then as we go throughout, please just drop any questions you have about egg freezing injections, the process, how to finance it, anything you hear, anything you want to know in the chat. And then we actually are going to have a Q&A at the end. And I love the Q&A part because I want to know what your questions are and what you need us to answer. So just a note there to start dropping your questions whenever. And then this is what we're going to run through, but essentially we're just going to talk about who egg freezing makes the most sense for. Layla's going to speak to that. She's going to walk us through kind of the 101 of what egg freezing looks like step by step, what to expect, injections, and then I'll dive into the cost of egg freezing and how to afford it and all the options that you have available to you, and talk about our new package that we have just launched for egg freezing, which I'm really excited about because you get like a guarantee essentially and a free second cycle if your first cycle doesn't work out. So and then we'll hop into the Q&A. Okay,
Sounds good.
amazing. Okay, I'll go first, Layla. But hi, everybody. I'm Claire. I'm our head of patient and clinic experience at Sunfish. I've been in the fertility field for 10 years, which is crazy. I actually started off in the lab. I was a lab scientist. So I was an embryologist and an andrologist. So I was the person in the lab doing the IVF, creating embryos for patients that were trying to get pregnant. So did a lot of clinical research, published papers, then moved to the patient care side. So at a big fertility startup called Progeny, I kind of handled their largest accounts for member experience. And now I'm over at Sunfish, so on the patient side, and I love just supporting patients through the process from like a financial focus. And then Layla, if you want to intro yourself, I put a huge blurb, but I'll let you just intro yourself.
Yeah, of course. So I am a fertility nurse. I am the co-founder and chief clinical officer at Dandi Fertility, which is a holistic approach to fertility. We are the first and only brand that brings, this complementary piece of the fertility journey, the fertility treatment process. We have products that make the injections more comfortable. We have both at-home and virtual injection services. We have consulting services, kind of holding your hand through the journey and kind of being your friend through it and breaking things down into layman's terms and everything for you. And this goes for everyone. It's not, just trying to conceive. We work with a lot of patients who are trying to preserve their fertility, whether it's egg freezing or embryo freezing. I used to work in the clinical setting. I worked at a huge clinic in New York City for a little over 10 years. I joined my co-founder a little over 5 years ago to focus primarily on this. During my time at that fertility clinic, I had already started a fertility concierge business, kind of like what we're doing at Dandy now. Dandy's just kind of scaled everything. But I have been doing both the clinical and concierge setting for over a decade now. We kind of help everybody from the earliest moments of understanding your fertility, understanding any diagnoses that you might have been given by your clinical team. We help patients select which clinic to go to, in places like New York, San Francisco, LA, there's so many options. We kind of help patients match themselves to a clinic and physician team. And then we have patients that go, all the way through, if someone's using a surrogate, egg donor, we kind of do every walk of fertility. We try to inject empathy and warmth and humor. I have been a fertility patient myself, which I think has been very, very helpful in bringing that real empathy. I think that all of the loss and everything that I experienced kind of gave me a different lens. I was obviously very good at my job in the professional sense, but I do think that having gone through it as a patient really, really put me on the next level of being able to take people through their journeys on an emotional level. And then obviously, related to Sunfish, we know that the financial aspect of all of this is huge. So as if the physical and emotional part wasn't huge, the financial aspect just adds a whole nother, realm to an already difficult journey.
Yeah, exactly. I know. And that's why like we love working with you and having you as a partner, as part of like our member perks because we do the same thing. We basically help you navigate the entire process from start to finish, finding a clinic, figuring out how to finance it, what are the costs, and then kind of guiding you throughout the whole process with our care team as well. So I feel like it's so great then to have you folded into it as well, just because as you go through this process, it can, even for egg freezing, it can be very overwhelming and isolating. So the more experts and people you can have on your side, the better.
Yeah.
That can kind of help project manage this from
Yeah.
start to finish. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. All right. So let's dive in then. So, Layla, who should consider egg freezing and like when? Like, I think people are always wondering, like, is it time? Is it time for me to start like thinking about freezing my eggs?
I don't think there is any wrong time. Yes, of course, statistically past a certain age, you might not have as much success. You might have not, the most ideal outcome. But in terms of on the younger side, patients are always like, oh, like, am I too young to do it? In my opinion, and from everything that I've seen in the over 10 years of experience that I have, I don't think that there's ever too early of a time. Kind of the worst case scenario is that you never need to use them, which is great. But if you are in the financial position to do so, if you work for a company that covers it, any of those things, if you can do it, the earlier the better. I know a lot of people, have these numbers in their head from whether it's the media or something that they've read. Kind of 35 has been the number that people really focus on. I think people are starting to shy away from that now, but it used to be that 35 was like the end all. So patients who would hit 35, 36, and they were thinking about freezing their eggs, they were like, I have to do it now or it's too late. Or conversely, patients were like, I'm not 35 yet. I'm in my late 20s. I don't really need to worry about this. I think that the earlier the better to at least go for that intro consult and get your fertility workup done so you know where you stand. We have patients who go into, premature ovarian failure or premature menopause in their late 20s, early 30s, and you would never know it without a fertility workup. There isn't anything, clear cut without that full workup for you to kind of know where you stand and when is a good time for you. So I would say that there is no wrong time, but the earlier the better if you're considering it. And then, like I said, worst case scenario, you just never use them. And of course, there is, everyone has their own ethical or religious or, whatever it is guiding them, their principles guiding them, that can be discussed as well. But I just don't think that there is a too early. And then too late, of course, like I said, the older we get, the harder it is to get a good outcome or a larger,
Yeah.
good quality amount of eggs. Um, it's obviously not I shouldn't even say obviously because I think a lot of people do think it's an insurance policy. Um, I think that there's this misconception that if you're freezing your eggs, you can come back and use them whenever you want and everything will be great because I froze my eggs. You really need to break down the statistics of how many, live births and successful pregnancies come from a frozen egg. The fact that we don't know anything about eggs other than their maturity. So we know which eggs are mature enough to be frozen, but we don't really know much about their quality, or their likelihood of turning into normal embryos and then eventually, a pregnancy, that takes and continues on to a live birth. So these are things that you want to discuss with your physician. So let's say my family plan is I want to have 4 children. They'll break down for you the number of eggs according to your own medical history and makeup, and your fertility workup, how many eggs you should have frozen for your family plan. But it's not a guarantee. It is not this insurance policy. If I freeze my eggs, I have 10 eggs frozen, I can have 10 kids if I wanted to. I think for a long time people equated those two, and that's just not really how it works. So I think it's really, really important. Go meet with somebody and get the full fertility workup done, and then the full breakdown of based on you and your makeup and your family plan, what should I plan for in terms of what's the number that's my goal, or according to my family plan and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of leads us to the next part. So essentially, when are you like when should you freeze your eggs? Whenever you start thinking about it. Like that's
Yeah.
probably the time. And
Yeah,
then Layla's
absolutely.
right, like go in, get the testing done, and then you will have to have a conversation with your physician at that point for how many kids are you thinking of having and everything, because then to family plan and figure it out, they do give you a ballpark range of how many eggs to freeze. It's not a guarantee. So we'll kind of get into that a little bit later for how we build our packages to help people kind of hedge their bets a little bit. But essentially, you're going to have a ballpark number where you want to hit. And it may take people more than one cycle. It just depends. But yeah, it's definitely better to go in earlier because egg quality is tied to age. So the younger you are when you freeze your eggs, the more likely the quality is good. But we can't test the eggs, so we don't know. So as many as you can freeze is better. So I think a lot of people, when they're considering going through this, like some of my friends, for example, they've been like, oh, hey, yeah, I'm just going to go freeze my eggs. And they went, and I think they weren't aware of what the process would entail and how and what the timeline. I think they just thought like, oh yeah, I'm going to go in and like it's done in like a day. So can you walk us through how long it actually takes from start to finish the process?
Yeah, so the process pretty much takes it's 8 to 12 days of medications depending on the person. So depending on how quickly or slowly you respond to the medications, it's about 8 to 12 days of medications. And then from there, the retrieval takes place. We usually tell patients that in a 2 week period, you want to kind of stay put. We don't want you traveling, unable to get in and out of the clinic for monitoring, which is like the ultrasound and the blood work that they do, to monitor your levels and see how they need to tweak the medications. And then it's also very important for when they actually give you the medication that schedules the egg retrieval. It's all very time sensitive and it's all very touch and go. But typically the medications are 8 to 12 days, and we tell patients to kind of keep this 2 week period open, and able to come in and out of the office for monitoring. And then in terms of the restrictions really, we keep them for about 7 to 10 days after the retrieval, and they kick in about 2 to 3 days into the retrieval in terms of, exercise, sexual activity, and things like that. So, and I don't like to use the word incapacitated because it's really not that dramatic, but if you're thinking about like, okay, when do I have to adjust my life? It's typically a 2 to 3 week period all in.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not necessarily that bad. And by the day after the retrieval, you should know like how many eggs you got and how many eggs were frozen. And then the process is complete and they go into storage.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then they stay in storage.
So
People always say, how long, when can I come back and use them? They stay in storage until you tell us otherwise.
exactly. So that's, I know people do worry about that a lot. So essentially, when you freeze your eggs, they go into storage. There are long-term storage facilities. We have one as part of our member perks where we get a really good discount where you can ship it once you're done at the clinic to long-term storage. And you can keep them there for like 10 years, 20 years, like whatever. And until you're ready to use them. And then you can have them shipped back to the clinic and have them thawed if you need to use them. And eggs can stay frozen for a really long time. I think that at this point, we don't actually know how long they can even stay frozen for.
Hmm.
So at this point, I wouldn't worry too much about that for people that are concerned about that as well. Like the
Hmm.
timeline so far seems to be good, like 10 years, 15 years seems like they thaw
Right.
fine.
Right.
Yeah. And then, okay, so let's dive in a little bit more into the medications because, like you said, yeah, the whole process, it only really takes a couple of weeks. So you go in for your consult and then everything like that. And then the next month is usually the soonest that you can start an egg
Yeah, it
freezing
takes like a
cycle.
week or two to get all of your clinics have checklist items. So consent forms and blood work, ultrasounds, all this other testing kind of leading up to it. And it's really up to you how quickly you complete that checklist. So it could be anywhere from a week to 2 weeks to a month. And it also depends on obviously, when you get your period, if you have an IUD and you don't get your period, if you're taking the birth control pill. But the process itself, all in, is about 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, that's a really good point. Can people get their testing done while they're on the birth control pill, or do they have to stop the pill to go and get their testing?
So we recommend being off of the pill for 2 to 3 months before doing the testing. Sometimes your AMH level, which is one of the indicators that we use for dosing purposes and kind of gauging what your reaction to the medications will be, we recommend that level. To be tested 2 to 3 months after coming off the pill, just because the pill can suppress that level, and so it's kind of a false suppression for us if we test it too quickly after coming off of the pill. So 2 to 3 months is ideal. And then from there, we can have a better, more accurate idea of what dosing to use for you.
Okay, so it's not so much about like egg count assessment, but more just about like the level of medication that you'll actually need. That's what it's more
Hmm.
about. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And then if you have your IUD in, you can just go get the testing. It's totally fine. Or
Yeah, they work like a little bit differently, and some people just keep the IUD in throughout the whole process. Obviously, every clinic and physician has their own preferences, but that is
Mhm.
a way that people do it as well.
Okay. Okay. So I feel like we're kind of already getting into the meds anyway, so let's just get into that. So when someone's going to be doing injections. I know that it's like 8 to 12 days. The injections, essentially, what they're doing is stimulating your ovaries to develop as
Hmm.
many follicles as possible. Each contain an egg, so that
Hmm.
hopefully you can retrieve as many as possible.
Hmm.
So, one thing is that I want to kind of ask is these medications, they're not able to create more eggs, right? It's just that they're developing the number of eggs that are there. Is that correct? Because I feel like that's a very common misconception. Can you clarify that for me?
Yeah, and the other way too, patients sometimes are worried that if we take their eggs, that's like their lifetime of eggs, and then they're gone for if and when they want to try
Yeah.
naturally to conceive or anything like that. I shouldn't even say naturally. I don't really love saying that in the fertility space. Unassisted is what we'll call it. But yes, people ask us all the time if it's going to grow new eggs. That's not really how it works. You have a baseline count. So when you go in for your fertility workup, they will do your what's called your AFC, your antral follicle count, and that just tells us at rest, at baseline, how many follicles are sitting on each ovary. Now, even that count isn't the final count because at any given time, just because we can't visualize it on the scan doesn't mean it's not there. And so let's say that I have 10 eggs on each ovary. That's my AFC, my starting count. That doesn't mean that all 20 of them, by the way, are going to start growing. It doesn't mean that I can recruit 20 more. All of that is a little bit more vague. It's not black and white. So let's say I have 10 on each side to start. Some of them might respond to the medications and start growing. Some of them might drop off. Some of them may, be recruited and we can't even see them on the ultrasound, but we'll be able to see them when we go in for the actual retrieval. So it's not really
Mhm.
this black and white thing. We're not growing eggs that you don't have, like we're not growing synthetic eggs. We're just trying to elicit a response from the eggs that you already have at baseline. And every cycle, your body has relatively the same amount of eggs give or take. So if I go in for testing now, my baseline is 10 and 10. Next time I go in, it might be 12 and 11. It definitely fluctuates, but we're not getting rid of all of them when we do a retrieval. You're still going to have more there. And that number doesn't equate to what you're going to get. And we're not growing synthetic ones. If we elicit a response, from the ones that are already there, that's a separate thing versus your body naturally tries to recruit and ovulate one or two eggs each cycle. Usually it's one, sometimes it's two. We are just trying to elicit a stronger response so that your body is growing and ovulating more of the ones that you already have. We're not growing synthetic eggs or more eggs than what you already start with.
Exactly. And then for the medications to kind of get the logistics, so we know it's 8 to 10 days, 8 to 12 days of medications. How many times a day is someone injecting themselves on average, just roughly?
So depending on the protocol, it's 1 to 2 times. So it's usually morning and evening. Some clinics do evening only. So it really just depends on your protocol.
Okay, got it. And then what are like, so when someone's taking these medications, I know that there can be, you can feel a little different because you have more hormones and there can be some bloating and things like that. So what do people typically experience while they're taking the medications and how quickly does it take to like subside?
Yeah. So, the most common side effect is bloating, hands down. Naturally, we're going to feel bloated if our ovaries are basically sucking up all of the water, and they're growing. Our ovaries are physically growing as the eggs on them grow, the follicles grow. The eggs live in these follicles. The ovaries are physically growing in size, and so you're going to feel that bloating. Bloating is definitely the number one side effect. We hear a lot of patients say that they feel kind of like a foggy headed, kind of a brain fog situation. I definitely felt those two the most when I did it. I did 2 egg retrievals, and I definitely felt those two the most. Cramping is very common, and these are all spectrum. So we have patients that don't feel anything to the point where they come and they say, "Are you sure it's working? Because I don't have any symptoms." That's great. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean that it's not working. It just means that you aren't having any symptoms. That's great. And then we have patients who go all the way to the other end and they feel really nauseous, really bloated, really crampy, and they have all of the symptoms. It could be anywhere in between those as well. It is a huge spectrum, but those are the most common things that patients report to us. We don't really report pain towards the end of it if you have a lot of eggs, if you've had a really strong response. We do have patients that say they can kind of feel it as they walk and take steps. They can kind of
Mm.
feel it in their pelvis. But we don't really hear pain on that level very often. Even after the retrieval, really, most of our patients are okay with over-the-counter um, pain medications like Tylenol and things like that. We rarely have to use our heavy prescription painkillers and narcotics for our patients. It's usually just like a soreness and bloating feeling that they have. It takes about 7 to 10 days to get your period after the retrieval. Some people get it sooner, some people get it later, but the average is about 7 to 10 days. Most people say they feel total relief once they get their period. So it's kind of like your body's releasing everything, letting it go and resetting. The day after your retrieval is usually the worst of it because all of the anesthesia is worn off. So that's when you feel the worst. And then little by little, every single day, you should feel a little bit better. But that full relief usually comes 7 to 10 days after. It also depends on how many eggs you get retrieved. So if you get a high number of eggs, you're not going to feel your best, and it's definitely going to take you longer to feel back to normal. But the most common symptoms I would say are bloating, brain fog, cramping.
Yeah, that makes sense. And people take like 1 or 2 days off work usually, right? Like right after the retrieval, and that's it. And they're good to go.
Yeah, we tell patients to stay home the day of just because they've had anesthesia. And then if they're feeling fine the next day, they can go back to work. People ask us about flying and travel and all those kinds of things. It's all about how you're feeling. So they'll give you the restrictions, like sticking to the exercise restrictions and sexual activity and things like that. But in terms of going back to work or traveling for work or traveling at all, it all just depends on how you're feeling and what your recovery feels like to you.
Got it. Okay, cool. Okay, I know we have I feel like we're trying to cover so much because there's so much to know. So we'll get to the financing
There
part in
is
a
a
bit
lot.
for like affording it. But can you give us a quick just kind of so this whole medication experience, that's really where Dandy comes into play. So how does that like where can women rely on you the most during this process and when would they reach out to get set up?
Yeah, so like I said, we do every walk of fertility. So even if it's someone who um, doesn't really know where to start, so
Yeah.
let's say they went to their, OBGYN or their GYN and they said, I wanted to freeze my eggs. What do I do? Where do I go? Who do I see? We can even start that early, where we meet with patients and we say, okay, you're in the New York area. These are the clinics that exist. These are the doctors. Based on your personality and your needs and your medical background, here's who we think would work really well for you. Or if you have a specific diagnosis, we can guide you based off of that. And then we tell patients, what to expect at their first visit, what medical records to bring with them to their first visit, so that they don't have to duplicate lab work and things like that. Some of our patients it's a really jarring experience if nobody gives you the heads up that they are going to do a transvaginal ultrasound, meaning that they stick the wand up
Mhm.
vaginally to view your uterus and your ovaries. And a lot of patients don't know that. They're not expecting that at their initial visit. So we kind of prep them for what the first visit looks like and what to anticipate. And then if it's someone that comes to us, after they've already met with their fertility specialist, we can break down all of their lab work for them. We can kind of go over their protocol with them and tell them what to anticipate based on their protocol. We have patients that use us for virtual services where we help them unbox their medication. So you get this huge box of medications. You don't know what goes in the fridge, what needles and syringes go with which medications. We walk them through that. And then we also have our at-home injection services and products that'll come for the actual time of the injection. So our products make the process a lot more comfortable. We have it's a hands-free belt system that has a heating pack and an ice pack, as well as a massager. The heating pad is also really great for recovery, and you can use it longer term for your period. It's basically a hands-free heating pad. Most heating pads you're plugging in, you're kind of stuck to the wall. This is a beautiful hands-free system, and it's rechargeable just like you would charge your phone. And then the at-home injection services, we have fertility nurses all over the country that can come to your home and do the injections for you. They can teach you how to prep and administer them for yourself. If you're scared of needles and you absolutely don't want to do any of them yourself, you don't even want to look at them, they'll come in and prep and administer them for you at each visit. And so we have this very flexible, you can kind of build your own complementary care. Whatever your needs are, you can kind of choose a la carte with us what you'd like to use. But we do a really good job of making sure that you're doing your medications properly, getting the most efficacy out of them. Patients always have issues mixing, or they panic. They don't know if they're mixing it correctly. They don't know if they're setting up the pens correctly. There's a lot of ready-ject pens that you think would be foolproof, but the whole process makes people nervous. And so we're kind of this medical care team that complements their clinics and their physicians and holds their hand through that piece of it.
Amazing. Yeah. And then we'll get into the financing right now, just for like how to afford it and everything. And then we have actually quite a few questions that people have dropped. So I want to make sure we get to those too. So
Sure,
I
yeah.
have time to go over if you do.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, amazing. Okay. So when it comes to the cost, that kind of happens at the beginning. And one of the nice things about Sunfish is that, like Layla also does, we help you choose a clinic as well. So if you come straight to us and you're like, oh, I don't know where to go, we have all these different clinic partners around the country, East Coast, West Coast, in the middle, where we can make a recommendation. And we have packages with each of them as part of our program that covers everything that would typically fall under an egg freezing cycle packaged into one simple cost and one simple fee. And then we have monthly payment plans that start at 0%. So you can actually break up the cost of egg freezing. So if you're not using insurance and you're not sure how much this is going to cost you, it's a good place to start with us, and we can walk you through what the cost would be at our partner clinics. So, for example, typically for an egg freezing cycle, it ranges depending on where you live in the country, but it can be $10,000 up to $15,000. Totally depends. Our packages start at $8,000, and then depending on where you are in the country, they can go up from there. And we have payment plans at 0% APR, so 0% interest for the first 6 months. So you can split it up. So it could just be maybe a few $100s a month, depending on what your financing options are when you go through. But basically, we can split it up onto a monthly payment plan for you. And then we have this AI model. So Layla was talking a little bit earlier about when you're talking with your physician, how many eggs would you expect to freeze? So when you first get one of a package through us, your clinic will actually send us your initial test results. And the cool thing about that is that we have this model that essentially will calculate the minimum number of eggs you should aim to freeze. So, for example, if it calculates that you have 6 eggs you should aim to freeze, when you purchase one of our packages at that flat fee, don't end up freezing 6 eggs. Let's say you end up only freezing 3, you actually get a free second cycle. So Sunfish will just pay for that second cycle, and then you can go in again and try to freeze more so that you can get yourself up to that number that you were hoping for. So it's a new package. We're super excited about it. And that's kind of how it works. But essentially, yeah, it can be fairly expensive as a process because most times when you go into the clinic, if you're not using insurance and you're self pay, they're going to want that $10,000 to $15,000 up front. Like they're going to be like, okay, like this is how much it is. Like you need to pay now before you can start. So we make it a little bit simpler by packaging all the costs. You're not just paying every little bill every time. We handle all that with the clinic. We guide you through, and then it's just one and done billing. You pay once, you have a monthly payment plan, and then if you need a second cycle, if you don't reach the goal number of eggs we calculated for you, we have that free second cycle.
It's amazing.
No, it's awesome. And then, yeah, and then as part of it, we have a huge member perks section that you get access to. And it has things like Dandy on it with Layla, where her team essentially will guide you through all the injections, the kit. I'm a really big fan of the injection kit that you guys have. So that's all. That's all available as well. So that's kind of how we work in tandem. But I do love that you guys have the nurse support because I think it's just really important to have someone that you can check in with as you're going through because the clinic's not always
Yeah.
going to answer the phone. Like, love the clinic, but they don't always have time.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it's a lot of like back and forth with the clinics. Um, there's so many incoming calls and there's such a high volume of patients that you kind of like they're triaging it. So if it's not an
Yeah,
emergency to them, but obviously it's an emergency to you, they might not answer it in the timely fashion that you would like it answered in. And that's where these kind of concierge services come in handy, is that it's a lot more personalized, but you still have an actual medical practitioner walking you through it with, that clinical guidance. It's not just a support system, which those are beautiful too, but having that clinical backing makes all the difference.
exactly. Okay, so we're going to get into the questions. And then at the end, we'll just show you guys really quickly where you can go to reach out or book a consult with my team or with Layla's team if you want more guidance or if you're interested. So, first question, I wonder if we answer some of these while we're going through, but I think this one's for you, Layla. Do you
Do
have
you
any
have any
standard
which one
questions?
are you looking at?
Yeah,
The top one? Do you have any standard questions?
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, so we actually do provide, we have this one sheeter that we give to our patients before their initial workup. But you kind of want to ask them the things that I find patients kind of harp on, aside from the restrictions that they'll give you on exercise and lifestyle and all of those things. You
Hmm.
want to ask them what the cadence is of you seeing your primary doctor. So a lot of these clinics, again, they're high volume. So if you're somebody that wants to see your primary physician, the physician that you initially signed up for, you want to see them for every monitoring visit, you want to make sure they're the ones doing your every single procedure, you need to ask those questions up front because many clinics are on a rotating schedule. And so you might see your primary physician for the initial workup and then not see them for any monitoring visits and or your actual procedure. So that's something you want to ask them. It's more of these logistical things that I think throw patients off. Clinics do a really good job of giving you all of the other information in terms of restrictions and what to do, what not to do. But it's those little things I think that can be stressful for patients to make sure that you ask about. They'll do the blanket, everything else. They'll look through your previous records if you bring any blood work or ultrasounds or anything from your OBGYN. But those logistical things, if they matter to you, I would say are really important to ask. Who do I get to speak to? Is it a patient portal? Is it emails? Is it only that? Can I get someone on the phone? How long is the response time? Is it 24 hours for an email? Is it a couple of hours for a phone call? I think those are the kinds of things that aren't asked at the initial workup that end
Mhm.
up being bothersome to patients.
Okay, that makes sense. And then for the next question, I'll read it out. Does having been on birth control affect my egg count or retrieval amount? Are there different reactions for IUD versus birth control? We got into this a little bit, but if you want to answer more.
Yeah, so birth control, again, this is a common misconception. Birth control doesn't affect your egg count or retrieval amount in the way that you think it does. Birth control can mask if somebody has a fertility issue. So if somebody, let's say, isn't ovulating, they're not getting your period, and they're on continuous birth control, they would never know that. It doesn't cause the fertility issue, but it can mask the fertility issue. And it doesn't affect your egg count or your retrieval amount, but it can affect what we are able to see at that initial workup. And so that's why we tell patients for a more accurate um, reading to go off the birth control pill for 2 to 3 months before having those levels checked. But no, we don't see like adverse reactions for people who have been on birth control or for patients who have an IUD in place when they cycle or anything like that.
Okay, amazing. That's good to know. And then okay, I'll handle this one, I think. Really, you can come in too. Does insurance typically cover the cost of medication? What is the average cost? So it depends. Some people do have insurance coverage for fertility medications. Not everyone does, so you have to check your benefits and see if it's covered. And when you go into the clinic, they also they'll run your benefits and they'll find out. And the pharmacy also does it when your medications are ordered. The average cost, I would say it's like $5,000 roughly for meds, five to $7,000. It depends on exactly what your doctor orders and how much you need, but I would say that's part of it. Um, as part of our packages, we have a partner pharmacy that you're not required to use it, but you can use it, and they price match. They'll give you the lowest price guaranteed on medication, and then they put a little like Sunfish little discount on top of that as well. So that helps a lot of our patients manage the cost of medications. And as part of um, buying the egg freezing package, when you get your monthly payment plan, you can actually include the cost of medication on there as well. So you don't have to get slapped with like a huge medication bill. You can just put that in as part of the monthly payment plan. So that usually helps a lot of people. But yeah, Leila, do you have anything to add there?
No, so it really just depends on the insurance. Like sometimes we'll see insurance companies that will pay for the medications but not the procedures or vice versa. So when you go in for your initial visit, you can also request to speak to the finance team and they can do a thorough look into your benefits as well.
Yeah. And then, okay, I'm really excited for this question. So my friend got OHSS pretty severely. That stands for ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, after the retrieval. How often do you see this in patients? So, Leo, first, can you explain what even is OHSS? And then, yeah, how often do people see it? Like, what are the symptoms?
Yeah, so I feel like this is one of those like other like hot button things that you see all over the internet when people write about this process is OHSS, OHSS. People will call in and say, "Do you think it's OHSS?" OHSS is actually like a medical emergency. It is a very severe thing that people aren't just commonly getting. And in my, I worked in a very high volume clinic for 10 years, 10 plus years, and I only ever saw like a true OHSS maybe 5 times. A true, like, had to be hospitalized for, blood transfusion, that kind of thing. It's not very common to have, you know, um, patients who don't feel well to a severe level post retrieval. Sure, that's more common, but a true OHSS diagnosis is not as common as you think. And even still, if you were to have OHSS, knock on wood, it's very, very treatable. It's not like this end all be all, knock on wood, life threatening thing. So it's not as
Mhm.
scary as the internet makes it all out to be.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. I think a lot of people probably when they're going through it, if they know about OHSS, are wondering if they have it, and probably they're just like really bloated. They're just like, oh,
Yeah,
really? Like, do I?
exactly.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Yeah, because like that's a big part of the experience for some people when they're freezing their eggs. Okay, those are all of our questions. So from my end, I just wanted to note that if anyone's interested in learning more about egg freezing packages, 3 second cycle, everything like that that we have at Sunfish, you can actually book a call with our team and just learn more and see what your options are. So it's great for people, especially if you don't have insurance, but you really do want to freeze your eggs. You can go to joinsunfish.com, and right there you can fill out our form and book a call with our team. So go there. We'll send out the link afterwards. And then Layla, how do people find you and reach Dandy?
Yeah, so you can go to www.dandyfertility.com. You can email me directly anytime. It's Layla at dandyfertility.com, hello@dandyfertility.com. All of these get filtered through our team, and we are very, very responsive. You can find us on Instagram, Dandy Fertility, send us DMs there. We are just a very responsive small team. So any of those modes will get you to us.
Fantastic, thank you. And then, oh, I almost forgot. So, as part of launching the egg freezing package, just so everyone knows, one of our partner clinics that's national is actually doing a freeze with a friend promo with us, so you can get 20% off of your treatment. So, if you are
Amazing.
interested, now's the time to book a call. Cool. Well, thanks, Layla. Thanks for coming on. It's always good to see
Thank
you.
you
It's
for
honestly been
having
like
me.
a couple years, so it's great to
I
have
know.
you.
I know. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, no problem. All right. Well, let everyone go. Thanks for joining.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you.